President Biden has signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law.
This action marks a major victory for the president's domestic agenda, less than 3 months before midterm elections. President Biden interrupted his summer vacation to sign the massive climate, health, and tax bill at the White House this afternoon. The House of Representatives approved the Democrat-backed plan Friday, following its passage in the Senate earlier this month.
Today offers further proof that the soul of America is vibrant, the future of America is bright, and the promise of America is real and just beginning.
Joining us now is CBS News political contributor Sean Sullivan. Hi, Sean. So tell us a little bit more about the Inflation Reduction Act, why it's so significant. What does it accomplish?
Well, this act is something that Democrats have been talking about for many, many years on two fronts, accomplishing something on health care and accomplishing something on climate change. And for the past few years, Democrats have been frustrated that a lot of these priorities that they've put at the front burner of their agenda have been beyond their reach. And this does that. This does it makes big investments in combating climate change, in transforming the sort of way we rely on energy and investing in renewable technologies through tax credits and other means. And it also aims to lower the cost of prescription drugs, lower the cost for seniors. It allows the government to negotiate eventually the prices of certain drugs. And these are things that Democrats have been talking about wanting to do for a long time, but it just hasn't worked out. And it looked late last year when they were zeroing in on this big, sweeping climate and social spending initiative that they were getting close. And then it all fell apart, and it looked like, look, they were not going to get this done. Now, this plan is less ambitious and less sweeping than what they talked about last year. But I think a lot of Democrats, if you would have talked to them earlier this year, would have said, I didn't think we were going to get anything close to this. So this is sort of the domestic policy achievement that you're already seeing Democrats run on. We heard from the president just a few minutes ago. He sort of set up this election year contrast between Republicans who oppose this plan and Democrats who voted for it.
And Sean, you talk about big investments in this legislation. How is this enormous bill being funded?
Well, one primary means that Democrats are talking about, and we heard the president talk about this, is changes to the tax code, changes that are largely designed to make wealthy corporations who aren't paying very much in taxes pay more. And so Democrats are setting this up as a sort of populist plan. Hey, look, this is a plan that we are financing through the wealthiest Americans, through the wealthiest corporations, not the working class. Now, when you talk to Republicans, they point to analyses that say, look, number one, you call this the Inflation Reduction Act. They point to analyses saying this, isn't going to potentially have a big impact on inflation. They point to the spending in combating climate change, for example, and they cast this as wasteful, as out of touch with what the American people need. So we really are looking at a very, very stark contrast in the making right now, politically speaking, between Democrats touting this bill and Republicans opposing it.
And so, the Inflation Reduction Act has become law less than 3 months before the midterm elections, which is certainly good news for Democrats, right? How significant of an impact, though, will it have on voters? I mean, there's no mistake to the fact that it's called the Inflation Reduction Act, right? They could have named it a bunch of different things, but that's clearly trying to, take aim at voters.
Yeah, the really big question now is a really big question, I should say, is how this will translate politically, given that these midterm elections are fast approaching. I think when you talk to Democrats about this, they think that this could potentially change the dynamic. They see the last few months and they see their candidates having to play a lot of defense, having to explain why President Biden has let inflation rise at such a fast clip on his watch, explain why gas prices have gotten so high, explain why crime and violent crime has risen in many places over the past couple of years. And so now they feel they can go on offense and they can say, look, we are campaigning on a concrete achievement that we passed in this Congress. And already this week, you're looking across the map, and you see some vulnerable Democratic senators in some of these toughest races already holding events touting these achievements. Senators like Mark Kelly in Arizona, who faces a tough race, senators like Raphael Warnock in Georgia. They're talking about these specific provisions. They're talking about the healthcare provisions. They're talking about other provisions. So Democrats believe, look, this gives us something to actually campaign on. We don't just have to explain the problems that happen. The big question, though, is that going to be enough? Are voters going to say, look, this bill is interesting and could potentially give us these benefits in the long run, but they're looking at gas prices that still remain somewhat high. They're looking at inflation that has been rising steadily. They're looking at other issues. And if those issues are more important to them, then it may not matter ultimately politically. So that's really the big question that we're looking at when we look at these midterm elections and what both sides are going to be campaigning on in the next few months.
It certainly feels like such a dramatically different political landscape. Sean Sullivan, Sean, thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.